You have probably watched a ladybug wander across your window and assumed it had no idea where it was going, just a tiny insect moving at random across a sheet of glass. But what if that little visitor was actually following signals you cannot see, searching for something it has been looking for long before it reached your home? The strange part is that the window itself may be telling the ladybug an entire story about food, warmth, shelter, and survival. And once you understand what it is really looking for, you may never see a ladybug the same way again. If the hidden world of nature makes you stop and look a little closer, subscribe, because some of the most fascinating stories on Earth are happening right outside your window. Most people never think twice about a ladybug sitting on a window. It appears for a few minutes, walks slowly across the glass, pauses as if it is thinking about something, and then disappears. By the next day it is gone, and the moment is forgotten. But for the ladybug, that brief visit may be part of a much larger journey. A journey that began long before it landed where you could see it. If you look closely, a window is actually a very strange object in nature. To us it is ordinary. To a ladybug, it is something entirely different. It reflects light in unusual ways. It collects warmth from the sun. It creates invisible patterns of temperature, and sometimes it even acts like a giant signal that can be detected from surprising distances. This is where the story begins. A ladybug does not experience the world the way we do. It does not see a house and think of rooms, furniture, or people. Instead, it moves through a landscape of scents, temperatures, shadows, moisture, and chemical clues. What looks like random wandering is often a response to information that we cannot perceive at all. Imagine walking through a city where every building is invisible and only smells, warmth, and air currents guide you. That is much closer to the world of a ladybug, and suddenly its slow movements across a window begin to look a little less random. During much of the year, a ladybug is searching for food. Despite its cute appearance, it is a predator. One of the most useful predators many gardens will ever have. Its favorite prey is often aphids, tiny insects that gather on leaves and feed on plant sap. A single ladybug can eat an astonishing number of them over its lifetime. But finding those tiny insects is not always easy. Plants are constantly changing. Food sources appear and disappear. Entire colonies of aphids can thrive for weeks and then suddenly vanish. So a ladybug spends much of its life exploring, looking, testing, following clues. Sometimes the path leads through bushes and flowers, sometimes across tree bark, and sometimes directly onto your window. The curious thing is that glass often sits near exactly the kinds of environments ladybugs are interested in: gardens, trees, shrubs, climbing plants, small patches of greenery around homes. To us, the window seems separate from nature, but to a ladybug it may simply be another surface in a much larger landscape. Yet there is another detail that makes this even more interesting. Ladybugs are strongly influenced by sunlight. They are cold-blooded animals, which means the temperature around them affects how active they can be. A cool morning may leave them sluggish and slow. A warm patch of sunlight can suddenly bring them to life. And few surfaces collect sunlight quite like a window. If you have ever touched a sunlit window and felt warmth on the glass, you have experienced the same thing, attracting countless small creatures every year. What appears to be aimless wandering may actually be the insect investigating a pocket of warmth that feels promising. But warmth alone does not explain everything. There are moments when ladybugs seem unusually determined. They move back and forth across the glass. They climb upward. They circle corners. They return to the same area again and again. At first glance, it almost looks like confusion. Yet nature rarely wastes energy without a reason. In many cases, the ladybug is responding to instincts that have been shaped over millions of years. And some of those instincts become especially important when the seasons begin to change. As summer slowly fades and temperatures start to drop, something remarkable happens. The priorities of a ladybug begin to shift. Finding food becomes less important than finding safety. Winter is coming. For a creature so small, winter is not simply a colder version of autumn. It is a season that can be deadly. Freezing temperatures can end the life of an insect in a matter of hours if it is exposed in the wrong place. So ladybugs begin searching for protected spaces, tiny cracks, sheltered surfaces, hidden corners, places where cold winds cannot easily reach them. And this is where homes become unexpectedly attractive. The walls of a house store heat. Small openings provide shelter. Sunny surfaces create temperature differences that can be detected by insects. A ladybug approaching a building may not understand what a house is, but its instincts can recognize something that feels safe, something that might help it survive the months ahead. Most people never realize that the ladybug on the window may be evaluating the area in exactly this way. Not seeing a home, not seeing a room, not seeing a person, but sensing an opportunity, following signals older than human civilization itself. And the most fascinating part is that the ladybug is not the only one doing it. Because as the seasons change, countless other insects are searching too, each one following its own invisible map through a world filled with clues that most of us never notice. And once you begin looking for those clues, you start to realize that an ordinary window is not just a window at all. It is a meeting point between two worlds. One we understand very well, and another that is unfolding around us every single day without us ever seeing the full story. The deeper you look into the life of a ladybug, the stranger that little insect on the window begins to seem. Most people know what a ladybug looks like, but very few know how it experiences the world. It does not rely on vision the way humans do. Its eyes can detect shapes, movement, brightness, and direction, but much of its understanding comes from something else entirely. The world of a ladybug is built from signals, invisible information drifting through the air, tiny chemical traces left on surfaces, changes in temperature that are too subtle for us to notice. To a ladybug, every leaf, branch, flower, and wall contains clues. Every surface tells a story, and every story may lead toward food, danger, shelter, or another ladybug. This is why what looks like a simple walk across a window can actually be a process of investigation. The insect is gathering information, testing its surroundings, deciding where to go next, and some of the clues it follows are surprisingly sophisticated. For example, when aphids feed on plants, the plants do not remain silent. Many species release chemical compounds into the air when they are under attack. These compounds are invisible to us, but they can spread through the surrounding environment like messages. Certain predators, including ladybugs, can detect these signals and use them to locate potential food sources. In a way, the plant is accidentally helping the hunter. A ladybug flying through a garden may be guided toward an aphid colony by information carried on the wind. The strange part is that most people standing nearby have absolutely no idea this communication is happening. An entire conversation is taking place around them without a single sound. But that hidden network goes even deeper. Ladybugs themselves leave chemical traces, tiny messages that can influence the behavior of other ladybugs. Scientists have discovered that insects often communicate in ways that seem almost impossible when viewed from a human perspective. We tend to think of communication as words, sounds, or gestures. Nature often uses chemistry instead. A single molecule can carry information. A faint scent can become a roadmap. A barely detectable trace can help an insect decide whether to stay, leave, hide, or continue searching. And this begins to explain one of the most curious ladybug mysteries. Every year, people notice large numbers of ladybugs gathering in the same places. Certain walls, certain buildings, certain rocky slopes, certain sunny surfaces. Sometimes dozens appear together, sometimes hundreds, occasionally even thousands. At first it seems impossible. How do they all find the same location? Why do they choose the exact same spot? The answer appears to involve a combination of environmental cues and chemical communication. Once a good shelter is found, others may be drawn toward it. One successful discovery can slowly become a gathering point for an entire community. Yet there is something even more surprising. Many ladybugs spend part of their lives in a state that almost resembles waiting. During colder seasons, some species enter a period of reduced activity. Their metabolism slows, their movements become less frequent, they conserve energy. They gather in protected locations and remain there for weeks or even months. This means the ladybug you notice on your window in autumn may be searching for a place where it plans to spend a significant portion of the winter. Suddenly, that brief visit feels much more important. It is no longer just an insect passing through. It is an animal making decisions that may determine whether it survives until spring. And survival is not always easy. Birds eat ladybugs, spiders catch them, weather threatens them, food sources disappear. Yet despite these challenges, ladybugs have developed remarkable defenses. Their bright colors are not merely decoration. The familiar red shell covered with black spots serves as a warning. Many predators learn that ladybugs are not particularly pleasant to eat. If threatened, some species can even release droplets of foul-tasting fluid from their leg joints. This behavior is sometimes called reflex bleeding. It sounds dramatic, but it is simply another survival strategy developed over countless generations. Nature is full of these hidden adaptations, tiny solutions to enormous problems, and most people never notice them because they are happening at such a small scale. This is what makes the ladybug so fascinating. The closer you look, the more complexity you find. Beneath the familiar appearance is an animal constantly making decisions, searching for food, avoiding danger, following chemical trails, reading environmental signals, conserving energy, responding to seasons, navigating a world that feels completely different from our own. Yet perhaps the most surprising detail is how often these hidden processes intersect with our lives. A garden wall, a backyard tree, a flower pot, a window warmed by afternoon sunlight. These ordinary places become part of the ladybug's story, places where instincts meet opportunity, places where ancient behaviors unfold right beside human homes. And there is one behavior in particular that reveals just how extraordinary these insects really are. Because under the right conditions, a ladybug can perform a journey that seems completely impossible for something so small. A journey connected to weather, geography, and seasonal change. A journey that begins with a single insect on a window and ends in places most people would never expect. And once that part of the story begins, the tiny visitor on the glass starts to look far less ordinary than ever before. One of the most surprising things about ladybugs is that their lives are far larger than their size suggests. When we see one crawling across a window, it is easy to imagine that its entire world exists within a few feet of where it happens to be standing. But nature often hides extraordinary stories inside ordinary creatures, and the story of the ladybug becomes especially fascinating when scientists begin tracking where these insects actually go. In some parts of the world, ladybugs do something that seems almost unbelievable. They travel. Not across a garden, not across a backyard, but across entire landscapes, fields, forests, valleys, hills, and sometimes distances that appear impossible for such a tiny insect. For years, people assumed many ladybugs simply lived and died within relatively small areas. Then researchers began discovering evidence that certain species were capable of seasonal movements far more complex than expected. Some populations gather in elevated locations, such as hillsides and mountain regions. Others disperse widely during warmer months and then regroup when conditions begin to change. Suddenly, the familiar insect sitting on a window becomes part of a much larger ecological story. A story involving weather patterns, geography, seasonal timing, and survival strategies developed over millions of years. But perhaps the strangest part is what happens when large numbers of ladybugs come together. Most people have seen one ladybug. Some have seen several. Far fewer have witnessed what can happen when hundreds or thousands gather in the same location. Imagine a rocky hillside covered with clusters of bright red shells. Imagine tree trunks with insects packed into crevices. Imagine entire surfaces appearing alive with movement. These gatherings are not accidents. They are often part of a survival strategy. By clustering together, ladybugs can create conditions that help them endure difficult seasons. The group becomes more stable than the individual. Safety increases, exposure decreases, survival improves. Yet how they find one another remains one of the most intriguing aspects of their behavior. The answer appears to involve a combination of environmental signals, sunlight, landscape features, and chemical communication. Each insect is following simple rules, yet together they create something that almost looks coordinated, something that seems larger than the sum of its parts. And this leads to an even deeper question. How much of the natural world is organized this way? How many hidden systems surround us every day without attracting our attention? A ladybug offers a glimpse into that possibility. Because once scientists began studying these insects more closely, they discovered that even their early lives contain unexpected complexity. Before becoming the familiar spotted adults we recognize, ladybugs spend part of their lives looking completely different. Their larvae resemble tiny miniature alligators more than the cheerful insects people know from storybooks. They crawl through vegetation hunting aphids with remarkable efficiency. In some ways, they are even more voracious than the adults. If you encountered one without knowing what it was, you might never guess it would eventually become a ladybug. This transformation is a reminder that nature rarely reveals its full story at first glance. Beneath familiar appearances are hidden stages, hidden behaviors, and hidden purposes. The same insect can look like multiple completely different creatures throughout its life, and that transformation is only one chapter in a much larger cycle. There is another detail that makes ladybugs particularly remarkable. Unlike many animals that depend heavily on learning from parents, ladybugs receive almost no guidance. A newly emerged adult already carries the instructions needed for survival. It knows how to search for food, how to respond to temperature, how to avoid certain dangers, how to seek shelter when seasons change. These behaviors are written into instincts refined across countless generations. Every ladybug on every window is carrying an ancient survival program shaped long before humans built houses, planted gardens, or installed glass panes. In a sense, the insect is acting out instructions that have been tested by nature over immense stretches of time. Yet even those instincts can produce surprising outcomes. Sometimes ladybugs enter homes in large numbers. Entire groups may gather around windows, attics, walls, and ceilings. People often assume something has gone wrong, but from the insect's perspective, it may simply be following signals that resemble the kinds of protected spaces its ancestors sought for survival. Warm surfaces, stable temperatures, shelter from weather. What seems like a mistake to us may be the result of instincts working exactly as intended. And that is one of the most fascinating lessons hidden inside the story of a ladybug. Nature does not operate according to human expectations. It follows its own logic, a logic built from survival, adaptation, and countless generations of trial and error. The closer we examine even the smallest creatures, the more that hidden logic begins to reveal itself. The insect on the window is not lost. It is not wandering aimlessly. It is participating in patterns far older than the building itself. Patterns connected to seasons, food, weather, reproduction, and survival. And perhaps the most remarkable part of all is that these patterns continue around us every day, whether we notice them or not. Entire dramas unfold on leaves, walls, tree branches, rooftops, and windowsills. Entire journeys begin and end within spaces small enough to fit in the palm of a hand. Yet those journeys are every bit as real as the migrations and adventures we celebrate in larger animals. The difference is that they happen quietly, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to look a little closer. By now, the ladybug on the window no longer seems quite so ordinary. What first appeared to be a tiny insect wandering across a sheet of glass has gradually become something else entirely: a traveler, a hunter, a survivor, a creature reading signals hidden all around us. And perhaps that is the most remarkable part of this story. Not what the ladybug is doing, but how much has been happening right in front of us the entire time. The natural world often hides its most fascinating secrets in the things we think we already understand. We notice the bright red shell. We recognize the black spots. We smile when one lands nearby. Then we move on without asking what brought it there. Yet behind that familiar appearance exists a life filled with decisions, challenges, instincts, and invisible connections. A life unfolding at a scale so small that it easily escapes attention. The strange thing is that once you begin noticing these hidden stories, they seem to appear everywhere. The spider web stretched between two branches is no longer just a web. It becomes a hunting strategy perfected over millions of years. The bee moving between flowers is no longer simply collecting nectar. It is helping sustain entire ecosystems. The ant crossing a sidewalk is no longer wandering alone. It is participating in a network larger than itself. And the ladybug sitting quietly on a window becomes part of that same hidden world. A world that has always existed alongside our own. Consider how many times a day we pass living creatures without really seeing them. Tiny dramas unfold on leaves. Predators search for prey beneath flowers. Insects communicate using signals we cannot detect. Countless organisms react to changes in temperature, moisture, sunlight, and scent. Entire communities are constantly responding to information flowing through the environment. Yet most of it remains invisible because our attention is focused elsewhere. We are busy. We move quickly. We think in human scales. Nature often operates more quietly, more patiently, more subtly. And because of that, some of its most beautiful stories are also its easiest to miss. The ladybug offers a rare opportunity to slow down and notice, to recognize that even a creature smaller than a fingernail can possess a surprisingly rich relationship with its surroundings. It follows seasonal rhythms. It responds to environmental changes. It searches, explores, adapts, and survives. In many ways, it is doing exactly what all living things do. The difference is that its world is measured in leaves instead of landscapes, cracks instead of caves, and windows instead of mountains. Yet the fundamental story remains the same: life searching for what it needs, life responding to challenges, life finding a way forward. There is something comforting about that realization, especially in a world that often feels increasingly disconnected from nature. Many people imagine that wilderness exists somewhere far away: deep forests, remote mountains, distant national parks. But the truth is much simpler. Nature is already here. It exists in gardens, parks, sidewalks, rooftops, balconies, and windowsills. It exists in the spaces between buildings. It exists in the shadows beneath bushes. It exists on the leaves outside your home. And sometimes it announces its presence through a tiny red insect that pauses on a window long enough for you to notice it. The next time you see a ladybug, you may find yourself looking at it differently. Instead of wondering how it got there, you might wonder where it has been, what signals it followed, what shelter it is seeking, what season is influencing its behavior, what invisible information surrounds it at that exact moment. Questions like these transform an ordinary encounter into something far more meaningful. They reveal that curiosity is often the difference between seeing and truly observing. And perhaps that is the quiet lesson hidden inside this entire story. The natural world does not always reveal itself through dramatic spectacles. Sometimes it reveals itself through patience, through attention, through small moments that invite us to look a little closer. A ladybug on a window may never seem important enough to stop and study, yet once you understand the hidden journey behind that tiny visitor, it becomes difficult to ignore. Suddenly, the glass is not just glass. The insect is not just an insect. The moment is not just a moment. It is a glimpse into a living system that has been unfolding around us all along. And somewhere outside, perhaps on a leaf, a flower, a garden wall, or another sunlit window, another ladybug is following the same ancient instincts. Searching for warmth, searching for shelter, searching for the next step in a journey that began long before we noticed it. Quietly moving through a world filled with invisible signals, a world that has always been alive. A world that becomes more fascinating every time we choose to look a little closer.